Hello, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Cinema. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Adam.
Today, we're talking about Cure, the police procedural thriller horror movie from 1997, directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. This is another movie that none of us had seen before. We had talked about watching this, I think, each of the last 2 Octobers. And felt like we're putting this one on the calendar.
Yeah.
We're doing an episode on it, so everybody has to watch it, and we're finally going to get over this sort of self-imposed hump, almost.
Yeah. Self-imposed hump. That's a good band name. And also, that fits with the theme of the other movies we've been doing this October. It's kind of been a lot of ones that have been on our watch list for a while. We've almost watched them. We've always, and now this October, this is the season. It's the season of finally watching Possession and finally watching Cure, and for you, finally watching Donnie Darko teaser for an upcoming episode.
Yep. And finally watching Perfect Blue, which we just did an episode on as well. So you guys got anything you want to say about this? Otherwise, we can just dive right into kind of the...
I mean, I could let the people know what it's about.
Adam, that's a great idea.
So without further ado, Cure from 1997. A frustrated detective deals with the cases of several gruesome murders committed by people who have no recollection of what they've done.
Spooky. Yeah. Spooky. Yes, so, all right, I can get into my spiel now. At a glance.
Now we're exploring.
Yeah. Again, Cure, Kiyoshi Kurosawa from 1997, kind of known as like sort of the unofficial beginning of like the J-horror movement. And so he also directed Pulse in 2001, which I think is maybe a little more well-known. I still haven't seen that, but I might check that out this month after watching Cure. Yeah. It looks like an interesting movie. There's not a lot of information out there on the budget and box office, so I will just share what I was able to find. Wikipedia has the budget for this movie as about $7,000 US.
Wow, that can't be right.
I feel like that's wrong.
What?
Yeah. Well, also back in the 90s, so it could be different. They put it at like 1 million yen, I think.
Yeah, that's what IMDb says right now, and I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe I don't know. It's strange.
Look,
if we can get verification on that, then this becomes one of my favorite low budget movies ever. If the budget is truly that low,
honestly, this might go up like half a star if it's actually true. I mean, conceptually, it's kind of as cheap as you can get. It's similar to like Get Out, where it's just like, hypnosis or mind control or some element of that. And there are no special effects needed for that. There's no there's nothing. So it's a good way to make a cheap horror movie. I just have trouble believing they made it for this cheap.
Yeah.
And then box office.
So according to the Google machine, 1 million Japanese yen is $6,672. So pretty low.
Right, but I don't know what that was in the 90s.
Back in the day.
Different, and who knows. And then box office $193,000, which if this was made for about 6-7K, that's not too bad. But
no,
it looks like this wasn't a hugely popular movie right when it was released, which is right up our alley.
Yeah, that's again keeping with the theme so far this October.
Movies that people didn't see when they came out, but have since
just skyrocketed in popularity.
An appreciation for. And then accolades: 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.5 on IMDb, a 4.2 on Letterboxd, which puts it at number 205 on the Letterboxd Top 250, and number 6 on the Letterboxd Top 250 horror movies.
Number 6.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
We got a big dog here, according to the Letterboxd community, that we're finally diving into. And before we dive further into it, wanted to remind everybody to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see our sort of roughly weekly discussions and deep dives into one older movie that we find interesting. Kind of this October, we've been going the more sort of cult favorite and kind of under the radar hit, but that doesn't mean we won't work in some blockbusters in here from time to time. But basically any kind of movie that we find interesting, which is a pretty wide range of movies, we might watch it and discuss it. So we're not really limiting ourselves to any decades or genres or budgets or any specific type of thing. So
all we can tell you is we do try to mix it up, just as far, as far as bouncing around decades or concept or, whatnot. So we like to keep you on your toes, but I don't mind. All these movies fit just so well with October and kind of, so when we've seen all the classic horror movies, we had to start digging into the cinephile deep cuts.
And speaking of more, not so much a deep cut, but just kind of cinephile favorite, our next movie will be Donnie Darko, which I had never seen. I actually texted you guys this past Saturday afternoon. It was a little gloomy. I had slept until like 11 a.m., which I haven't done in like years. And I just got up. It was like 12:30 or so, or 1 o'clock. And I just texted you guys Donnie Darko time. And I hit play. I got about 3 minutes into the movie, and Dylan texted me with a very urgent and emphatic wait.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Don't do it. It's a trap.
Yeah. And wait, I did. And I went over to your place that evening and we watched it together. Adam watched it last night. So we'll be getting to that next. But back to Cure for today's movie. Opening statement. Dylan, what you got?
Cure is a gripping supernatural crime thriller that knows how to stick the landing, which is so important in horror movies. It reminds me of those early A24 or A24. I really got to decide how I'm going to start saying that.
Right.
Reminds me of early A24 horror classics, like the Witch, Midsummer, Hereditary. The way that they are operating on multiple levels and the way that they get their memorable horror moments, not from jump scares, but from moments that needed to be built up to actually hit and have the payoff. Really character driven story. So I just felt like when I was watching it, I was seeing kind of an inspiration or just like an early kind of prototype for that kind of 2015, starting in 2015 A24 horror run. So that's my opening statement.
Yeah. So for me, I got, if you've never seen this before, slow burn horror, heavily influenced by Silence of the Lambs and Seven.
Yeah, you can see that.
Is how I would kind of come at this. We'll talk later if there's some maybe kind of sort of supernatural elements in this that aren't there in Seven or Silence of the Lambs. They might not be here as well, but more heavily hinted at than in either of those movies. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that was for me just kind of, I could not help but think of those two movies while I was watching here. And also that HBO miniseries from a couple of years ago, The Outsider. That was
I haven't watched that.
Based on that Stephen King story, and just kind of the familiarity there was kind of a detective diving into something that they might have to start to wrap their head around potential supernatural elements, that they view the world as kind of a black and white facts kind of a thing, and it just sort of brings them into this deeper, maybe mythical, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, that kind of forces them to rethink the way they see things.
That's really interesting that my opening thoughts were kind of about, I saw this and thought about movies that came after that were influenced by it, and you saw this and thought about the movies that influenced it. That's very interesting. Yeah. All right, Adam, you're up.
Not as interesting. I just had delightfully creepy and a great mental thriller.
Oh yeah,
because this forces you to kind of choose how you view, like as you're saying, is it supernatural? Is it not? Like it forces you to make a decision on whether or not you believe it's powers or it's just simple, mild suggestion to people. So we'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that.
Yeah, for sure. So defining moments, Dylan, you want to start?
First, for me, it was, and I just want to quick get the name right here. So of all the characters, where's the first time we meet Mamiya. Yeah, for the first time. Yeah, Mamiya. The first time we meet him, just kind of wandering the beach in bright sunny daylight, but the moment we see him, it's clear he has this kind of evil energy around him. He kind of has this negative evil presence, and even though it's just like, oh, it's a beach in broad daylight, like you kind of immediately start to fear for this random civilian that's on the beach. And then the way there's that long kind of ongoing shot with the civilian then gets up and walks over, and then here our guy's still there, and then he kind of follows them, and then they talk again, and then they kind of like the kind of cat and mouse, the way he's just you can tell that he has a plan and he's up to something, but you don't know what. You just know it's creepy, and you're like, oh, you should not bring this guy home. And then of course he does. But that was a defining moment for me. That very first image where we first see him there was just so well done. And then also the police station scene with the two cops sitting there. You're so intrigued because you're like, all right, he's finally in like official police, like institution, like custody. Like, we're going to get to the bottom of this. But then it's just like, no, like it doesn't play out that way. And I thought that was really fascinating and kind of unsettling. I love the first time he used water to hypnotize somebody, the way that was shot. Because I almost felt like, I'm like, oh, they show it. And I almost felt a little like mesmerized for a little bit because you're watching, you're like, wait, why am I watching this? And you're like, oh, wait.
We should stay away from you for the next several days. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, no, I've been drawing X's everywhere too. That's weird. And then just the ending. The ending, I absolutely felt like was nailed and made me think. And definitely when that happened and when it cut to black, I was like, okay, like, yeah, like that's how you do it. So,
okay.
Yeah. So those were my defining moments.
Yeah. I like your point of kind of bringing up the first time we see Mamiya. Mamiya. Yeah.
However we want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
The way it goes.
He seems like he almost just kind of manifested out of thin air, or like he apparated there. Like he wasn't there, and then he is, and it's just, I like the way they show that, like on a beach with the ocean behind him. Like, yeah, it's sort of an overcast day, but that's still just generally supposed to be viewed as like kind of a tranquil place.
Yeah.
And he just kind of upsets that tranquility immediately, which is a little ironic for somebody as calm as he is, seemingly.
Yeah.
But it's very unsettling. So what I had was, number one for me was another interview, but not the first time they interview Mamiya. The first time they interview that other cop. Or not the first time, but just when they interview the other cop, because that's like one of the other killings.
Yes.
He kills his partner, and they bring him in, and this is kind of the first time that they're starting to latch on to the hypnosis theory. And the one guy like shows him a flashlight, and just the way that conversation goes and how they're able to almost like reverse engineer the way he was hypnotized, or kind of like turn it back on again.
Yeah.
I thought was fascinating. And then there's like kind of a little like very slight background score or like music going on there that I actually watched one of the Criterion videos kind of analyzing the movie. And that video said that was actually like very faint sounds of the dryer that his wife keeps turning on when he comes home, which I think is really interesting, because I kind of noticed that it was like sort of, it had a rhythm to it.
Yeah.
And then the way he just kind of like draws an X over that guard.
Yeah.
I loved that scene so much. That was when the movie went from like, okay, this is kind of fascinating, to like, I started to really feel the stakes. And it felt like, okay, we're opening some doors here into something more sinister. And now I'm like really, really hooked.
Yeah.
And then I also had the first interview with Mamiya. And then also this, I thought, for just a single moment, might be the one that affected me the most, when Takabe goes home and thinks that his wife has committed suicide.
Yes.
That shot and the acting that he does reacting to that was incredible. Yeah. And that's also kind of when the movie, because before that, he's talked to Mamiya and you kind of feel like he's going to be okay. Like he's sort of on his guard. He knows more of what to look for than anybody else has.
Sort of, he's sort of immune to the powers, if you want.
Right. It feels like, all right, he's going to be fine. He can handle this. He knows how to kind of weave and duck and dodge and do what he needs to do. And then you see that, and at first you think she's dead.
Yeah.
And then she's not. And then all of a sudden you realize that for the entire rest of the movie, you're not going to know what's real.
Yeah. Yeah. And that the hypnosis or whatever it is has gotten into him now.
Yes. Right. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like
he's affected in there, whether we thought so or not.
to what degree, we're not really sure. Is he going to be able to fight it and like suppress it or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But that's really the turning point, I think, where it's like, all right, he's got this thing in him now, suggestion, or Adam, to your point, maybe something supernatural. Like we don't really know. And for the entire rest of the story, we're going to have to be afraid of that.
Yeah.
And not necessarily trust everything that he's showing us and that the movie.
Yeah, he's compromised now to some degree. It's just figuring out at what level.
Yeah. And then the last one I had was when Takabe goes to Mamiya's cell and Mamiya almost acts like his therapist.
Yeah. That was
really great as well.
Yeah, I had the first encounter, like you said, Dylan, like on the beach. Then I had both the interrogation from Takabe with Mamiya. Asking him and figuring out who he is and being like, this is who you are. This, showing him a picture of himself and being like, we found you in our database. Like, we know who you are.
Yeah.
That whole bit, because that's where he starts to learn about it, starts to understand a little bit more of what this character, this sinister serial killer, basically, that to his degree. He thinks he's a serial killer. That one, and then the kind of the police inquiry with all of the brass.
Yeah.
And how in the inquiries or in the interrogation scene, he gets upset with him like basically right away because he's not getting answers. He's getting very frustrated. And that's the exact same thing that happens with nearly everybody and all of this top brass. All these people who are supposed to know and be like, all right, we'll assign charges and all that stuff. And the one guy in the back is like, I'm from headquarters. Well, like, fucking answer me. And he just won't do it. And he's playing the crowd, everybody, all these super smart people. And he's just playing it perfectly and just being like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. And then sort of hypnotizing all of them, like just by being himself.
Yeah, it illustrated how kind of impervious to like traditional institutional justice system this type of force is.
Yeah.
Or this, like, whatever's going on is. Like
there is no higher authority. I am the authority. Like, I will do what I please and you will just deal with the consequences.
Yeah, or kind of like, I'm no longer bound to the constraints of society.
Yeah.
And therefore you hold no power over me whatsoever.
Exactly. That, and then obviously the ending, the final shot, really. So
unintended.
Actually, no.
Well, no,
it's a knife, but
well, right. I was thinking of the
cut to black moment.
Yeah. So those are mine.
Great. All right. On to questions. This should be a good movie for some questions. And we'll just go right back to Dylan here.
Okay. All right. First question for me. Oh geez. Well, I guess, you already kind of hinted to it, and I guess I'll just throw it out there. How supernatural is this movie really?
That was my number one question, is like, is there anything here, or I don't know. I think the beauty of this movie is its ambiguity. The only kind of the guts to just let it sit and not kind of feel the need to explain this to people, whether it is or isn't. And just sort of leave it there. I mean, I lean no.
Yeah.
But then we're just kind of relying heavily on the idea of just straight hypnosis or some type of, I mean, there's,
it doesn't,
at the very least, if it's not supernatural, it's sort of like a superhuman ability.
Yeah,
to do
this. The only part of it I feel like that doesn't fit, if you're just going to look at it as a completely cold, like practical, it's just hypnosis and stuff, is that the connectivity of the violent events that seem to be at the heart of it, and that like they show the video of Mesmer or whatever from like 1908. It's like, oh, it's this Japanese woman that he hypnotized, and then the next morning she killed her son. So that part connecting with the violent acts we're seeing now is the only part that doesn't. If you're looking at it straight practical, then why is there this malevolent force that's in all of it? Unless what it's trying to say is the hypnosis is just the key, and all the violence and stuff is actually just what's inside human beings. And it's a lot of the feeding into the theme of, which I kind of feel like the more I've thought about it, is maybe one of the main ideas is just the age old kind of phrase of all evil needs is for good people to do nothing. Kind of the slow creeping evil the malaise. It takes advantage of your malaise and just takes it over. And I feel like that kind of lends itself to the idea that like all this evil was already inside us, and they got hypnotized, and this just kind of brought it out, a side that was already there. And there's nothing supernatural. It's just we have that capacity within us. But also, the way it's filmed and the way it makes you feel, it feels like there's something more going on.
So,
but it never explains.
And that's how like I feel it is supernatural, because of that connection, and because like I view however saying his name, Mamiya as the devil. Like he doesn't come from anywhere that we can tell. Yes, he's in the like the police system and stuff, but like whatever, he's just like the devil has maybe like taken over his body or something.
I think if it is that, I think that's the most likely explanation.
Well, because we look at the old video and it's clearly like some like old guy doing the sign and like doing all this stuff to this woman. I feel like him not knowing who he is, or not knowing who he is part of that, like I've been possessed, or like now I have this like power that's the only thing that like I'm a vessel for.
Yeah. Him as a vessel, which works with the ending, because then Takabe has become the vessel
else, which is to me the kind of the point that like it'll always persist. The devil is always around the corner. He's always influencing things but never directly. Like that's kind of his whole bit. He's never directly implied. He's preying on human nature, and that's the point.
And the idea of the vessels and going to it, that really I feel like has almost like a direct parallel to like Hereditary, where it's like it's in Mamiya, but that Mamiya is not a perfect vessel. Mamiya is not. It's just living there until it can find a better host, and then it's like that's who I want is Takabe.
Yeah,
and then the ending is it has achieved like.
Well, and
if you look at it that way,
especially because at the end, like Takabe doesn't seem to be as like
fragile.
He's still himself and just knows he has this power.
And he has
like, I don't know who I am.
It seems like he has a better control of it.
For sure. He discovered it.
He gets that waitress. He gets that waitress to pick up that knife way quicker than what Mamiya needed, which was like focus and a lighter, and it like. So I don't know. And Nate, what do you think? What are you thinking from our two interpretations? Or somewhere in the middle?
I mean, God, it's just. I do go back to that line that his it's not his partner, but like the
doctor he works with,
psychiatrist that he's working with.
I think it is.
Yeah, there's a line in the movie where he says like you can't hypnotize somebody to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do. Like it's got to be in you already, and that's I think where a lot of the horror for this movie comes from, which is that all they have to do is he just kind of gives people like a little flick on the ear, basically,
a little nudge,
a little nudge. And then he kind of strips that away. And I think it is going for that like we're all very close to just doing this ourselves anyway, and how fragile it all is. And I don't know, you guys have maybe turned me around a little bit on some of the supernatural elements. I need to watch that final scene again, because I realized that I think I was still thinking while watching that scene, I was still kind of thinking about the scene before it.
Yeah.
Then it just sort of happened. And I was like, oh, interesting, and now it's over. And I don't think I was like 100% focused. That last scene kind of snuck up on me a little bit.
Okay,
let me ask you this then: do you think Takabe killed his wife?
Yes.
Do you think that's how he knew he had the power? Because she's obviously, he goes to visit her again and she's dead, but like he visited her right before that, and who knows if he like tried to pull the trick, I guess we'll call it,
right
on her, but then she's just dead in like 5 minutes, basically. With the
it would fit, I think, because all of these people kind of kill somebody that them not being there maybe make their life a little bit easier. Other than like the doctor who just wants to like tear somebody's face off and look at what's underneath.
Well, like,
oh my God,
very primal urge,
healing somebody.
But I mean, I think it kind of hints that way with the sort of bus ride in the clouds, which they do twice. Like he's kind of hypnotized seemingly after that. I don't know. This is just every time I say something about this movie, my head says it could be the other way, though. So I guess, I mean, to kind of go with that, or I guess last thing I'll say in that regard is with kind of who's doing these killings. I found it really interesting that, I'll save this for observations and stuff. That's kind of where I had that.
Okay.
So Did you have other questions, Dylan? Otherwise, I had one that I could get to.
Say I've got a couple too. So.
Yeah, my question was like at the end when Takabe is in the diner, he's visibly smiling. He's visibly happier, or at least smiling in the way that like a fake smile, and that really made me think of like the ending of Midsummer. And so,
Sure.
So it makes me think like, how do you think that how and choosing to end it that way? What is that trying to say with the greater themes about everything we've been talking about? But I feel like we're already kind of discussing the greater themes, so I think it just kind of depends a lot on your interpretation of whether he is happier actually, or has an evil force just using him as a vessel now, and the force is the evilness is happy that it's controlling him now. Like, ha ha ha.
Be a bit of both.
Like, yeah, a bit of both. Like, I don't know. It's because the other people, like, when the husband kills his wife, he's not really happier the next day. The other people aren't.
No, they're freaking out.
They're freaking out.
They're obviously distraught.
Calm.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's another good point. I mean, I think it kind of goes with all of the weight that he's feeling for the entire movie is basically between trying to catch this killer and not having any idea how to deal with his wife.
Yeah.
And it feels, and like both of those things, both of those weights seemingly they've both been lifted by the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Whether both of those things were at his hand or just one was, I don't know. But I think that's where I think it doesn't necessarily matter if he killed his wife or not. I think it's clear that he's happy that she's no longer around.
Well, yeah, he straight up tells Mamiya in the one of the last conversations in his cell that, like, yes, she is a burden, and I know that, and he's just like smiling at him, like, okay, like, thanks for telling me, like, I already knew that.
He's a little more straightforward with what's bothering him, I think, than other people are. Mm-hmm. So I guess with that, I was going to ask, like, what does the title of the movie mean?
Yeah, I was trying to think of that.
I mean, I guess like a cure for societal malaise and like a lack of kind of individuality and connection to who you really are or who you would be if you were just kind of left to your own devices. That part I find, I don't know, kind of interesting, but not as much as I feel like the movie thinks it is.
Yeah, I'm not,
because so many people are kind of addressed by like their title and their role in society.
Yeah.
With a teacher and a cop and a doctor, like all these people are,
important members of society that have
like pillars of the community.
Yeah, pillars of the community. That's a great way to say that.
Yes, like very respected jobs. I mean, those are like 7 of the jobs you've even heard of when you were a kid.
Yeah.
When you play that in school, say, what do you want to be when you grow up? There are like 10 jobs. Kid lists. Yeah. And these are 3 of them. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a pretty deliberate choice to kind of go at the more respected people in the community, or respected job titles at least, and just kind of tear that down and be like, at the core, we're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
I guess I just feel like no matter how I think of what, like, a cure for what, like, what is the, is it saying that the illness is, what's the disease? Is the society the disease, or are the evil within all of us the disease, and the cure is resisting our terrible natures? I don't know. That's the one thing I thought I have not been able to pin down in the days since watching it.
It's an interesting one to think about. Adam, did you have any? I guess I had 2 kind of silly questions, but
ask your silly questions, because mine are
does
a little bit off. Does
this movie make you never want to smoke again? And how much did you just want somebody to punch Mamiya in the face when he went through one of his, like, who are you?
Oh my God. See, he's so frustrating.
What are we doing here? I'm sorry, you answered this 8 seconds ago, but what's happening right now, and where am I? Like, somebody just needed to kind of deck that guy.
Yeah, I wonder if that would have spurred him to do the hypnosis earlier or quicker.
I have no idea.
Or if he would have just like taken his lumps and then been like, I'll get you later. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. But nobody seemed really willing to just kind of tell the guy off.
I felt like our best chance was with the cops, and then when they were kind of just like, like, this goofy guy, it's like, damn it, No one's gonna punch this man.
All right, Adam, did you have anything else? Or
so my questions were a little weird. Like, how long do you think he was doing these things? How long do you think Mamiya was like pulling these murders? Because again, I viewed him as like an incarnation of the devil, and he just appears. He's clearly just roaming the countryside for a long time until he stumbles into Tokyo and starts doing all these murders and stuff like that.
Well, we know that there were 2 more before the first one. Yeah, we hop on kind of, and it's already been happening. What I'd be curious to know is if we view this as kind of like a vessel, and then it's moved on to Takabe at the end, meaning it was kind of with somebody else before, maybe a little bit like It Follows, or something. Do those murders have the same mark, or are they kind of, is each vessel kind of doing its own thing? Like, was this happening before, but they were having their pinky toe chopped off as the or whatever.
Has it always been the X?
Right.
I want to say it's like, to maybe explain that, it's like I want to say it's always been the X, but maybe it's been smaller, because in the video they show you from like the 1800s or something, the late 1800s, like the guy is doing like the mark. He does he does the swish, but maybe it was like smaller, or wasn't necessarily like on the chest, it was somewhere else. But because like the rest of these people for these murders, it's like massive all across the body. But
I mean, now that we're talking about it, I feel like I have a couple other questions that I thought of that kind of play into what Adam says. Like, do you think Mamiya himself is kind of self-hypnotized or in a state of hypnosis, like
in a trance?
Like, has he given into it, and like because then you would think long term, if he's been in this trance long term, then that explains why he can't remember, doesn't care.
Or is that just part of an act to get close to people?
That's kind of his tactic style,
right?
Yeah, because that's my next question: is do you think he actually knows who he is?
I do.
And like, I think he does too.
Yeah,
I think he knows exactly what he's doing, because it's very intentional that he like finds somebody and then just decides to do.
I think
the hypnosis.
The big thing for me is like when he can't smoke in the doctor's office, then he just switches to water. And like he even says some things there when he starts talking to her about like not literally who he is, but he seems more lucid.
He has moments of lucidity.
Yeah, I think he definitely knows what's going on.
The other question was, I saw this theory online, is that Takabe's wife has been hypnotized by Mamiya.
Yeah, I don't I saw that one too. I don't like that theory, because then it's just I don't like Takabe as being like kind of this predestined mark from the beginning. Like, what's the point of hypnotizing his wife if you can just hypnotize like everybody?
Yeah, I guess the idea was that it long term, it kind of makes him more susceptible to like the hypnosis, because it puts him in this mental state that is very much like frayed and on edge, and
when he's like, he seems to be immune by and large.
It creates like, he's a very, very good person, so if we're going to foster the evil within him, this will help. And mostly it's just weird because it ties in with like the dryer thing and the vibrations, how the wife is so like kind of drawn to that, and then to your point, the vibration, that same noise in the background during their interrogation. So like, is that a mark of the force that we're dealing with? And if so, then it seems to already have its claws in his wife. But that was just a theory. I didn't know.
Well, part of that theory too, excuse me, was that the beginning of the movie, the doctor's notes are in German.
Oh yeah.
When his wife is meeting with the doctor and he's like asking her about the Bluebeard story or whatever, those notes are all in German, which is where the origin of all this stuff comes from. So there are a lot of little hidden things in this movie.
I like that though. That adds some more layers. Like,
but then does that mean that like the real villain is that doctor? Like, I feel like you can just kind of keep going if you really let yourself.
If it has to travel from person to person, it goes all the way back. Yeah. Damn.
Right. So
then there's basically 2 incarnations of it. If it's the doctor, then like how did he meet Mamiya?
Well, anybody can go see a doctor.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean? Like,
interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting because
I want to rewatch it while thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like from the angle that that Takabe is a long-term mark, kind of the way that the kid in Hereditary is, and you just don't realize it until the end.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But yeah, if he's going to be a vessel, it's like that's a better vessel, or like take the best among us and tear him down. Like,
oh yeah, there's definitely a theme. I think themes of going. You see all these people kind of giving into the evil, and then a detective who should be the most, no matter what. But
real Harvey Dent timeline.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. All right. On to observations and musings. I just had a couple, or maybe one even, that we haven't touched on yet, but just that this movie is weirdly funny at times.
Yeah.
Specifically, there's a line that comes to mind. Adam, you mentioned this in one of your favorite scenes earlier, but when Mamiya disses Takabe's boss, when the guy like at that big interrogation, when he's just like, I'm in charge and you got to do what I say. And he's like, kind of, they're sitting right next to each other. And he's like, is this your boss? He's like, yeah. Oh, that must suck or something.
That guy's
must be a drag.
Yeah.
It must be a drag.
It's funny to see them sitting right next to each other and kind of thinking the same way. Like he's already kind of starting to gravitate towards that level of, because, like that's why a lot of dictators don't like comedy. It's a way to kind of bring people down and remove yourself from that structure of authority.
Yeah.
And if he's already just kind of a little dig, and then you think about your boss maybe a little bit differently and you don't take him as seriously. And it's just kind of that slow, long game and sort of removing him from his place in society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with the humor. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but
right. But there were other moments.
There's 3 or 4 good laugh moments thrown in there. Just kind of like the one guy. Remember when he goes to pick up his clothes from the dry cleaner, and there's already a guy waiting there, and the dude's like, "Oh, sorry, I can't seem to find your jacket. I'll be right back." And he leaves, and the dude next to him just goes on like a curse-filled rant about he's like, I fucking hate this, and I'm gonna kill. It's like, oh my god. And then he's a cop, and then the guy walks out, and then he kind of like looks at him like down the street as he walks away.
I think that goes with like that guy's function is to give you your dry cleaning. Yeah. And when he's not fulfilling his function, he ceases to have value at all to this other guy. He's not a person. He's just like an engine cog that has failed.
And I think it also plays in with the evils within all of us. You just have this random guy, and here we clearly see he's on the brink.
Yeah, he's 2 seconds away from doing this shit anyway. Like, all it takes is the nudge. Yeah,
yeah. I like that moment too. I'm glad you brought that one up. Anything, Adam?
I would just say like how shocking like some of the scenes, the murder scenes are that Takabe has to go to like right away, and some of the deaths that we see are just like so gruesome
and casual. At the same time.
Casual.
No one is acting as if anything is out of the ordinary.
They're
the ones who have killed. Yeah. It's cold blooded. Like the doctor for sure, I think is the worst one, but like the 2 police officers, is just like it's just there he goes, bang bang, like just done. It's just over.
Or the ones where we just see the aftermath. It's just like
so
the slow pan. From the window to the room, and you just see this blood everywhere, and you're like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
that's why. And the psychological horror parts of it. That's kind of one of my observation musing was how they get away with just the unsettling imagery, and you get the after effects, all the blood, but then you also get multiple scenes where the perpetrators like break down completely afterwards, realizing the horror of what they've done.
What has happened?
Yeah, a lot of come back.
They've come back, and then pair that with his reaction to when he thinks he sees his wife hanging there. Like it's a lot of like bare-faced reaction, human emotion, like stripped down. Like those are kind of a lot of the memorable moments. My last observation of musing was I the only one who thought for a while there was going to be some sort of vampire angle to this?
Yes, well, speaking for myself, that never entered my mind.
Really? Oh god, it was totally because with the like mind control part and then the X on the neck, I was like, they have the people slash the neck because they can get to the blood without leaving the marks.
I can see where you're going with this.
And I was like,
that never crossed my mind.
I was totally like, that's what this is. I'm like, it's a vampire movie, and then he appears in broad daylight, and I'm like, maybe like a special kind of vampire.
Just like trying to feed your own.
Yeah, and I
like,
was
oh no,
like,
it's withering away.
Jam the vampire in there.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, like he has memory loss. That's an interesting angle on vampires. Like that they over time they forget who they are. Like, man, this movie's really interesting. And then as it went on, I just had to concede. I was like, there is no vampires here.
I love that. That's fantastic.
That's funny.
All right, Adam, what do you got for tidbits?
Tidbits. There's not much. So I'll say this. Martin Scorsese said Cure was Kurosawa's most terrifying movie. So that's fun. Again, this is Kiyoshi Kurosawa, not related to Akira.
Do you know it was which Kurosawa he was talking about?
I hope so. In a poll conducted by Sight and Sound, Bong Joon-ho listed Cure as in his top 10 favorite films of all time. So totally that's fun because we were big Bong Joon-ho fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then the last one I really like is an alternate version of the film includes an ending which shows the waitress actually killing somebody before it cuts to credits. So it's a little bit more direct, which I like that it doesn't show it. Mm-hmm. It would just be more like fan service to be like, oh, look at her do it.
I just want to see it to see if she also does an X. That's the only thing. Otherwise, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that's true. Because if she doesn't do an X, then this is gone forever. Like then it is the devil.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So yeah, those are the main ones I found. Nothing else is really.
I also remember Ari Aster saying I think he said this might be the best movie ever made.
Oh, he's a big fan. I can totally see that.
Absolutely.
With his style. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the multiple interpretations, all of it.
For sure.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. I was just gonna say the kind of lack of tidbits that are because they're hard to find, and Nate, you said the box office information and stuff like that was hard to find. I feel like that fits with this movie.
I was just gonna say it almost makes the movie a little creepier, doesn't it?
I know, like the movie itself seems to have just appeared out of nowhere. Like there's no documentation. It's just
nobody made this. It's just here now.
It just appeared like Miyama on the beach. Just exists now. Yeah, adds to the lore, kind of like with Possession.
All right, we're gonna jump into the McCabe Code of Excellence. Yes. Adam, if you want to grace us with this image, it is time to award the coat.
Mm-hmm.
God, it's so beautiful.
It's just amazing. Every time I look at that picture, it never gets old.
The bowler hat completes it, but God, that's
it does. It's a great look.
It's so good.
So again, or if you've never joined us for one of our discussions before, we're big fans of McCabe and Mrs. Miller, particularly McCabe's coat. Mm-hmm. And like the Masters, we're going to award this coat to basically the winner of the movie.
If there is one. If
there is one, yes. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to earn it. You got to shoot under par at the very least.
Yeah.
To earn the coat.
Do something good, something worthwhile.
And we're each going to award it ourselves, so there can be up to 3 coats awarded to anybody involved with the movie that we think exhibited excellence and is worthy of the coat. And we don't have to give it out if we don't want to. So,
yes.
Dylan, who gets the coat? Does anybody get the coat?
For me, I definitely thought about the lead actor, Masato Hagiwara. I just felt like with the psychological stuff, dealing with the stresses of his wife and then this case and just everything. I mean, that was really fantastic, but I gotta go with writer-director Kiyoshi Kurosawa. I mean, to write and direct this and just to have it seem to be way kind of ahead of its time in some ways, but also to your point, like, of its era, fitting in with Seven and Silence of the Lambs. I just felt like what he achieved here, clearly this was like his vision. He kind of came up with this whole thing. So I got to give it to him because it's just so good. I mean, it's the type of thing you would think would be like almost adapted from a book right?
Yeah.
Like it's so well put together. So I got to give it to
like old 1800s or like early 1900s, like a Daphne du Maurier novel or something like that.
And then like the word cure is in the title, and that's why the movie is called Cure.
Yeah.
But so I'm gonna give it to Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
All right, Adam.
Oh boy. I think if I'm gonna give it to anybody, it's gonna be Kurosawa. I would say a lot of major props, major kudos to Koji Yakusho, who plays Takabe, and Masato Hagiwara, who plays Miyama.
He plays Miyama. Okay, I meant the guy who plays
weirdly
Takabe.
at the bottom of the cast list.
Yeah, that threw me off. Okay, I meant the guy who played Takabe. I mean, the guy who played Miyama was great too, but lead actor, the guy who played Takabe.
Yeah, so that's Koji Yakusho.
Okay,
I think both of them did fantastic jobs. They're like delightfully creepy. Miyama is just this enigma. It's just you can't figure him out. It's very hard to do, which makes the investigation portion of this movie so much more interesting. Because you are on like a journey to find out like who this guy is and what his motives are and why, and you never really quite get them. And then it just transfers. So I think both of those performances are really good, but I think I would give it to Kurosawa just for the writing, the direction, like you're saying, the taking your vision and making it exactly what you wanted and then nailing it. Because I think like we've talked about, the ending is perfect.
I think so too.
So yeah, I'm like right on the fence for a few things, and also right on the fence with just not quite awarding one.
Yeah,
like everyone
everything about this I feel like is like a B plus. Like if A minus is or if an A is, it's everybody's like right below.
They're so close.
Yeah. And I think I'm gonna sit on that. I might change my mind, but I feel like if you're not super excited to give the code out, I feel like you gotta hold it back.
That's fair. Then maybe I would do that. But this is like one of the only horror movies I've watched this October. I know we're quite a few days in, but I was like, ooh, this is good. This is a solid horror movie that like I don't see a lot of this type of stuff today. So, and I'm not going to go back and watch like Friday the 13th and be like, oh yes, well actually the actor who played, this would be one of the ones I would give it to. So
I felt like it really didn't show its age either. I mean, like really. It was made in 97. I felt like it could have been made in 2006 and it would have looked the same. Like it just felt almost like a Bong Joon-ho movie, kind of like it did not show its age. That's interesting. So officially I am the only one who's giving out a coat then, or Adam, what are you?
I'll give it to Kurosawa. I'll give it.
Okay. All right.
It's the only
I'm close for him, and I'm really close for Koji Yakusho. Particularly that reaction that he has when he thinks his wife is dead. I think that's some of the best acting I've ever seen, just in that little bottle of a moment. Also, kind of fun fact, he is also in Tampopo, which has been on our watch list forever as well. So maybe we'll get to that at some point in the next few months too.
Okay, cool. I like
so wrapping it up with closing statements. I guess I'll kick this one off. For me, it's just a chilling and fascinating horror movie that demands repeat viewings.
Yep, I'm pretty much there with you. For the third straight closing statement, I'm starting with the same opening 5 words. A very bold psychological thriller.
We have been doing kind of similar-ish movies.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
A very bold psychological thriller that felt like a blueprint for more modern, high-level horror. It will leave you thinking for days. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I'm going to basically say the same thing I said to start. A delightfully creepy movie that sticks to the landing.
You watch Coraline for the first time and now everything is delightfully creepy.
Listen, but I haven't even talked about that movie yet. So
I know, but
do we need to create a platform for Adam to just talk about Coraline?
Good.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, but right. I agree. Yeah.
Good episode, guys. That was a really fun discussion. Really, really fascinating movie to talk about.
Absolutely. And a reminder of our next movie.
Donnie Darko. I finally watched it. Yeah. Did it live up to the hype?
Find out next time.
Find out
next week.
Is it my turn to put a wrap on the show?
It is.
All right. All the things that used to be inside of me, now they are all outside.